My father walked into my son's sixth birthday party, carrying a red gift bag, and introduced himself as Grandpa. He had not called me on a birthday since I was 16. He had not attended my high school graduation, my wedding, or the hospital where his first grandchild was born. For years, he had posted photographs of his wife and her daughter, beneath captions about the family God rebuilt, while pretending the daughter he threw out of his house no longer existed. Yet there he was in my backyard, smiling beside the balloons as if 15 years of silence were merely bad traffic. He did not come because he regretted abandoning me. He came because my stepsister's Christmas wedding was collapsing, and he needed $68,000 before Monday. I was not invited to the rehearsal dinner, the bridal photographs, or the table reserved for immediate family. He still said I owed him because he had fed and housed me until I was 16. When I refused, he threatened to use my dead mother's estate to drag me into court and said I would learn what happened when an ungrateful daughter humiliated her father. I gave him 5 minutes to leave my property. 3 weeks later, at Thanksgiving, he placed a repayment agreement beside my plate and asked 22 relatives to pressure me into saving the wedding, so I opened the box containing the last letter my mother ever wrote, the account statements he thought had disappeared, and the email in which he gave his grieving teenage daughter 14 days to get out. My name is Hannah Foster. I was 31 years old when my father reappeared, and by then I had spent nearly half my life building the kind of home he once convinced me I did not deserve. I lived with my husband, Luke, and our son Miles, in a modest cedar-sided house outside Grand Rapids, Michigan. The backyard sloped unevenly toward a row of maple trees. The kitchen cabinets did not match because we had replaced them in stages. Miles's toy dinosaurs occupied every room despite repeated negotiations. Our dining table had scratches, permanent blue marker beneath one edge, and a loose spindle Luke kept promising to repair. It was not impressive enough for a magazine. It was safe. To someone who grew up measuring the mood of every adult before entering a room, safety is more beautiful than marble countertops. I worked as an elementary school counselor in a district where many children arrived carrying problems larger than their backpacks. My office contained sensory toys, granola bars, extra gloves, crayons, tissues, and a small lamp because fluorescent lighting made difficult conversations feel harsher. I helped children whose parents were divorcing, drinking, disappearing, fighting, losing housing, or simply failing to understand that a child's behavior often became loud after the child's needs had been ignored quietly. I did not choose the job because I believed pain automatically made people wise. Pain can also make people cruel, controlling, or numb. I chose it because adults had once stepped into my life when my own father stepped out, and I wanted children to know one reliable adult could change the direction of an entire childhood. My mother, Rebecca, died when I was 13. She had ovarian cancer, though for most of the first year, the adults around me used phrases like treatments, good days, next scan, and staying positive. Children understand more than adults admit. I knew she was dying before anyone said it directly, because relatives began visiting without reasons, and my father started sleeping with the television on. Mom had been an art teacher at a community center. She painted old furniture, kept jars filled with buttons, and wrote notes on whatever paper she found nearby. Lunch bags, receipts, the backs of grocery lists. "You are never difficult for needing love," she once wrote beside a sandwich, after I apologized for waking her during a storm. I kept that note until the ink faded. My father, Richard Cole, had worked as a sales manager for a building supply distributor. He could enter a room of strangers and leave, knowing everyone's first name. He told stories well, remembered enough details to appear attentive, and hated any situation in which another person controlled the interpretation. During Mom's illness, he performed devotion beautifully in public. He organized fundraisers, thanked nurses online, and posted anniversary photographs with captions about fighting together. At home, he became irritated when her exhaustion disrupted plans. He called her fear negativity. He told me to be strong for her, which meant hiding my own terror so he would not have to manage it. When Mom died, He cried harder than anyone at the funeral. 3 months later, he began dating Dana Whitmore. Dana had a daughter named Kelsey, who was 14, 1 year younger than me. They moved into our house before the first anniversary of Mom's death. Dad said grief had taught him life was short. Dana said the house needed new energy. Kelsey received my mother's old sewing room because it had better light. Her bedroom was painted pale pink. My room remained the same blue Mom and I had chosen when I was 9 because Dad said repainting 2 rooms was unnecessary. Dana removed Mom's dishes from the kitchen and stored them in the basement. She replaced the family photographs in the hallway, with new ones taken at a park. Dad, Dana, Kelsey, and me arranged at the edge like a cousin who had arrived late. When the photographer asked us to stand closer, Dana placed one hand on Kelsey's shoulder and said, "This is our new beginning." Dad posted the photograph with the caption, "Grateful that broken families can become whole again." I stared at the word whole until I understood I was the visible evidence that the old family had not disappeared neatly enough. Dana was not openly vicious at first. She used concern. "Hannah seems resistant to moving forward. Hannah brings Rebecca into every conversation. Hannah's sadness is affecting Kelsey. If I cried, I was making the household heavy. If I stayed quiet, I was hostile. If I objected to Mom's belongings being removed, I was refusing to heal. If I wanted time alone with Dad," Dana said, excluding her, and Kelsey was unhealthy. My grief became a behavioral problem, while their discomfort became the family emergency. Kelsey learned the structure quickly. She was not responsible for entering a house arranged around replacing loss, but she discovered cooperation earned rewards. Dad taught her to drive in Mom's old car before I had completed my own practice hours. Dana said Kelsey needed confidence because changing schools had been difficult. When I asked why my permit lessons had been canceled, Dad said, "You've always been more independent." Kelsey received expensive tutoring after struggling in math. I worked extra hours at a frozen yogurt shop to pay for an SAT preparation course because Dad said finances were tight. When she joined the dance team, Dad attended every performance. When my artwork was selected for a statewide student exhibition, he arrived near the end because Kelsey's costume zipper had broken before a competition. "You understand?" he whispered while hugging me beside my painting. I did understand. The family had identified the child easiest to disappoint. That child was expected to call disappointment maturity. The final conflict began over money, though money was not the real issue. A year after Mom died, I asked Dad about the college account she had told me existed. During one of her hospital stays, Mom had held my hand and said she had saved enough to help me start without fear. "Not enough for every dream," she said, "but enough that you don't choose your life only by what is cheapest." After her death, Dad told me the medical bills had consumed nearly everything. I believed him. Then, at 16, I overheard Dana telling a friend that Kelsey's private high school tuition was being covered through family money Rebecca had left behind. I asked Dad directly. He became furious, not ashamed, not surprised, furious. He said Dana had misunderstood. I asked to see the account. He told me children did not audit parents. I said Mom had left the money for me. He said everything inside a marriage belonged to the surviving spouse. I said Kelsey was not Mom's daughter. The moment the sentence left my mouth, Dana began crying. Dad called me cruel. Kelsey locked herself in her room. That evening, the family meeting was about my jealousy, not the account. Dad said I had made the house emotionally unsafe. Dana said she could not raise Kelsey around someone who treated her like an intruder. I said, "She moved into my mother's room." It was technically the sewing room, but grief does not always choose precise language. Dad stood from the kitchen table, took his keys, and said, "You need to begin figuring out another arrangement." I stared at him. "For tonight?" "Permanently." I thought I had misunderstood. "I'm 16. Almost 17. I have school. You're smart. You have friends. Where am I supposed to live? You make everything sound more dramatic than it is." He gave me 14 days. 14 days to leave the home, where my mother's handwriting still marked my height inside the pantry door. 14 days to pack the clothing she had folded, the art supplies she had purchased, And whatever memories Dana had not placed in storage. He did not scream. That was the coldest part. He spoke calmly, as though terminating a service that no longer fit the household budget. I attended school the next morning and told no one. I sat through biology, geometry, and English, while mentally sorting what could fit into 2 duffel bags. At lunch, my best friend, Olivia Shaw, asked why I had not eaten. I said I felt sick. After school, she found me crying in the passenger seat of my mother's old car, which Dad had recently begun calling Kelsey's car. I told her enough. Olivia called her mother. Linda Shaw arrived in 20 minutes. She did not ask whether I had misunderstood my father. She asked whether I felt safe returning to the house that night. I don't need to stay long. I can sleep on the couch. I'll work. I won't cost much. Linda crouched beside the open car door. Hannah, stop negotiating your right to be safe. Her husband, Greg, converted their home office into a bedroom before I arrived. They had 3 children already. The house was noisy, crowded, and ordinary. I carried 1 duffel bag inside and spent the first month expecting someone to remind me I was temporary. Nobody did. Linda added my favorite cereal to the grocery list without announcing it. Greg drove me to school when the car disappeared from Dad's driveway and reappeared beneath a bow on Kelsey's 17th birthday. Olivia complained when I borrowed her sweater without asking, which strangely made me feel more included than constant politeness would have. The Shaws did not treat me like charity. They treated me like a teenager whose life had become unstable because adults failed. Dad never came to speak with them. He sent one email, saying I had chosen to leave after refusing household rules. He canceled my phone line 2 days later. He removed me from the family health plan at the next enrollment period, though Linda helped arrange coverage through a community program. He did not attend school conferences, graduation planning, or the scholarship meeting where I learned my mother's college fund no longer existed. I worked evenings at a bookstore cafe and weekends at a senior living dining room. I graduated wearing a secondhand dress Linda altered in her kitchen. Greg and Linda sat in the parent section. Dad did not attend. He posted a photograph that same afternoon of Kelsey beside a private school banner, congratulating her for finishing a challenging year with grace. I stared at the post for 10 seconds and blocked him. At 18, I stopped waiting for an apology. Survival became routine. I attended community college because grants covered most tuition. I lived with the Shaws while working, then shared an apartment with Olivia. I transferred to Western Michigan University and finished a degree in psychology before earning a master's in school counseling. There were no dramatic rescues. I accumulated stability through thousands of ordinary choices. I compared grocery prices. I took night classes. I kept emergency cash inside an envelope. I learned that a landlord saying no problem did not mean a lease could be late. I learned that exhausted people could still be kind and charming people could still abandon you. I learned to stop describing myself as low maintenance when I meant afraid to ask. During those years, Dad contacted me occasionally. A birthday message every few years. A generic Christmas card signed Richard, Dana, and Kelsey. Once, when I was 21, he sent, "Hope college is going well. Family is always here when you are ready to stop living in the past." I did not respond. He had rewritten the abandonment into my refusal to reconcile. That version allowed him to remain the patient father waiting outside a door the wounded daughter kept locked. Several relatives accepted it because asking me directly might create discomfort. At family gatherings I no longer attended, Dad said the Shaws had encouraged rebellion. Dana said I had chosen another family because they placed fewer expectations on me. Kelsey described us as estranged over a difficult blended family period. The language became smoother while the facts remained ugly. I met Luke when I was 25. He was a civil engineer, supervising accessibility improvements at one of the schools where I interned. We first spoke because he arrived early to a family resource night and began moving folding tables without being asked. He was patient, practical, and unimpressed by performative helplessness. When I told him about Dad, he did not say I would regret maintaining distance. He did not ask what I had done to contribute. He said, "A 16-year-old cannot be equally responsible for an adult abandoning her." The sentence felt almost radical after years of relatives calling the situation complicated. We dated for 3 years before marrying in Linda and Greg's backyard. Olivia stood beside me. Greg walked with me partway down the aisle, then stopped when I asked, because I wanted to take the final steps myself. Dad was not invited. He learned about the wedding through a cousin and posted a message about how forgiveness could not be forced. 2 weeks later, he uploaded photographs from Kelsey's engagement party with the caption, "So grateful to celebrate family milestones together." Miles was born 2 years later. During labor, I became terrified in a way no childbirth class had prepared me for. Not of pain, of failing him. I told Luke I did not know how to be someone's safe place every day. He held my hand and said, "You already know what unsafe feels like. We'll build the opposite together." Miles arrived with dark curls, an offended expression, and lungs powerful enough to announce his opinion to the entire maternity floor. Linda and Greg were the first grandparents to hold him. Dad saw a public photograph months later and clicked the heart icon. No message, no apology, just a tiny digital claim on a life he had not helped build. Over the following years, he liked more photographs. First birthdays, pumpkin patches, Christmas mornings, Luke teaching Miles to ride a balance bike. Dad never asked permission to share them, but several extended relatives began seeing screenshots with comments like, "My grandson is getting so big." He used the title without accepting the relationship required to earn it. I tightened privacy settings. Then a cousin messaged asking whether we still lived near Grand Rapids and whether Luke's engineering firm was doing well. The question felt oddly specific. I ignored it. Around the same time, Kelsey's wedding planning appeared everywhere online. She was marrying Aaron Blake, an accountant from Holland, Michigan. The wedding would take place 3 days before Christmas at Maple Lane Barn, the event property Dad and Dana had opened years earlier after purchasing an old dairy farm. That was where the college money had gone. I did not know the full truth yet, but I knew the timeline. The barn purchase happened months after Dad told me hospital bills had erased Mom's savings. Dana posted renovation photographs describing the property as a dream built through courage, sacrifice, and second chances. Kelsey later became its event coordinator. The business supported family photographs, styled engagement sessions, showers, holiday markets, and the wedding she had imagined since high school. I was not invited. A cousin accidentally sent me a screenshot of the guest list asking whether my address had changed. My name was absent. When she realized the mistake, she apologized and said Kelsey wanted people who had remained close to the current family. Current family. As though daughters expired. I did not respond. Then Dad began liking photographs of our house and Miles's birthday preparations. 3 days before the party, he followed Luke online. A cousin asked whether we owned the house or rented it. I told Luke, "He wants something." Luke believed me. We did not expect him to arrive. Miles's party was on a warm Saturday in June. We rented an inflatable obstacle course, grilled hamburgers, filled metal tubs with juice boxes, and decorated the fence with blue and orange paper streamers Miles had selected because they were fast colors. Olivia came with her children. Linda brought enough food to supply another party. Greg carried folding chairs as if a supernatural force assigned him chair responsibility at every event. 2 teachers from my school attended. Neighbors moved between the patio and yard. Miles wore a cardboard dinosaur crown and had already placed one finger into the frosting before anyone sang. The side gate opened at 1:37. I remember the time because Luke had just checked whether the pizza for the adults was late. Dad stepped into the yard carrying a red gift bag covered with cartoon race cars. He looked older, broader through the waist, gray near the temples, but instantly recognizable. My body reacted before my mind finished naming him. My first thought was Miles. How close was Dad? Had he spoken to him? Would he try to touch him? Fatherhood was not a feeling I was willing to let him perform near my child without consent. Dad smiled at me. There she is. Then he looked toward Miles. And there's my grandson. He claimed the title before asking whether he could remain in the yard. Luke moved beside me. His hand touched the middle of my back lightly, not directing, reminding, "You are not alone." Dad introduced himself to Luke as though we were meeting under ordinary circumstances. "Richard Cole, Hannah's father," Luke replied. "I know who you are." Dad laughed. "I suppose I've been discussed." "Not often." The answer unsettled him. He lifted the gift bag. "I brought something for Miles." "He doesn't know you," I said. "That's why I'm here." "You weren't invited." His smile tightened. "Can we not begin with hostility at a child's party?" The manipulation arrived before any apology. My boundary became the thing threatening the celebration, not his uninvited entrance. I asked Olivia to keep Miles near the obstacle course and walked toward the far corner of the yard. Luke followed until I told him with one glance that I wanted space to hear the request clearly. He remained 10 feet away. Greg stood from his chair. Dad followed me beneath the maple tree. "You look good," he said. "Nice house. Why are you here?" "I've been trying to reconnect." You clicked buttons beneath photographs. "I didn't know whether you wanted direct contact. Showing up uninvited suggests uncertainty stopped bothering you." He sighed. "You always had Rebecca's sharpness. Using Mom's name after 15 years felt obscene. Why are you here?" He looked toward the party. "Kelsey is getting married." "I know. Then, you know how important this is. To Kelsey. To the family." "Which family?" His jaw tightened. "I'm not here to argue about the guest list." "Good, because I'm not on it." That was Dana and Kelsey's decision. They thought the history might create tension. "My presence creates tension, but my money won't?" He stared. I had reached the answer before he announced it. "The venue has encountered temporary cash flow issues," he said. "A lender changed terms. 2 fall events canceled. The wedding vendors require final payment sooner than expected." "How much?" "68,000. I laughed once because the number was too large for his tone. "You came to my son's birthday asking for $68,000? A bridge loan." "Why me?" "You're doing well." "You don't know how I'm doing. You own this house. Luke has a strong income. You have retirement through the school system. Rebecca's mother left you something when she died." He had investigated. My maternal grandmother had left me a modest inheritance, most of which Luke and I used for our down payment and emergency savings. "That money is not available." "Everything is available when family needs it." "I'm not invited to the wedding." "This is not about a chair." "No, it's about whether I exist only when a payment is due." His face changed. The reasonable voice became firmer. "I raised you for 16 years. You were my parent for 16 years. Do you know what food, clothing, medical care, housing, and school activities cost? Are you billing me for childhood?" "I'm saying relationships involve responsibility on both sides." "I was a child. You are not one now." "Exactly, so you no longer get to decide what I owe." He moved closer. "Your mother left resources that became part of the household after she died. I kept the family functioning. You told me medical bills consumed everything. There were many expenses. Did you use her college account for Maple Lane?" His eyes flickered. That was the first confirmation. "You don't understand how finances worked." "Then explain." "Not here." "You chose here." "Hannah, I'm asking for help, not an audit." "The answer is no." He stared as though waiting for the word to expire. "You haven't heard the repayment plan." "No." "You could secure an ownership share in the barn." "No, Kelsey's wedding deposits will be lost." "Then she needs a wedding the family can afford." "You would let your sister's wedding collapse over teenage resentment?" "Kelsey is not my sister when photographs are taken. She becomes my sister when invoices arrive." His face hardened. "You have always been jealous of her. You gave her my mother's room, car, tuition, and college money, then told me to leave. Jealousy is not the word. You were impossible to live with." "I was grieving. Everyone was grieving. Only one child was expelled for it." He glanced toward the guests and lowered his voice. "If you force me, There are other options. Meaning, there are unresolved matters involving Rebecca's estate, family assets, support we provided, money transferred through your grandmother. I would prefer not to involve attorneys. I stared at him. The father who had abandoned a 16-year-old was threatening to invoice her for surviving. You have 5 minutes to leave. His expression changed from confidence to disbelief. Do not embarrass me in front of your little family. You have 4 minutes and 50 seconds. He attempted to step toward the house. I moved in front of him. We should speak privately. This is my property. You are leaving. Stop acting unstable. Luke began walking toward us. Dad saw him and raised his voice. I came to make peace with my daughter, and she's treating me like a criminal. Several conversations stopped. Olivia quietly redirected the children toward the obstacle course. Greg approached without rushing. Linda stood beside Miles. Dad had believed the audience would pressure me into politeness. He had not understood the audience knew who had stayed when he left. You came to demand money, I said clearly. You threatened legal action when I refused. That is not what I said. Then leave. I am your father. You resigned from that job when I was 16. He stepped around me again. Luke moved beside us. Mr. Cole, you need to go. Dad pointed at him. This is between me and my daughter. You brought it into our home and near our son. My grandson. No, I said. Biology does not give you access to Miles. His face reddened. You cannot erase blood. You erased responsibility. Greg stopped several feet away. Richard, the gate is behind you. Dad looked at him. Recognition arrived. You're the man who interfered. Greg's voice remained calm. I'm the man who gave your daughter a bedroom after you removed hers. The yard became completely quiet near us. Dad looked around and finally understood nobody present accepted his version. He held the gift bag tighter. This isn't over. You have 2 minutes. You'll regret humiliating me. You humiliated yourself. He backed toward the gate, still speaking about lawyers, family, money, and disrespect. Before leaving, he looked toward Miles, who was laughing inside the inflatable course. Tell him his grandfather came. I'll tell him an uninvited man was asked to leave. Dad slammed the gate. My hands began shaking after he disappeared. During the confrontation, I had felt cold and focused. Safety. First. Distance. Witnesses. Time. Afterward, the 16-year-old inside me remembered what his anger once meant. Luke held my shoulders. Do you want everyone to leave? I looked at Miles running toward the cake. No, we sang. We cut cake. Miles opened the race car Dad had left near the gate only after Luke checked the bag. I removed the card before Miles saw the signature and later donated the toy. The party continued because my father did not receive the power to become the memory Miles kept from turning 6. After the final guest left, paper cups rolled across the yard, and one balloon had tangled in the maple tree. I sat at the kitchen table with Luke, Olivia, Linda, and Greg. I told them the exact request and threat. Linda's face changed when I mentioned Mom's account. There's something you don't know, she said. Years earlier, shortly after I moved into their house, my maternal Aunt Marlene had contacted Linda. She believed Dad had mishandled money, but lacked proof. Dad had told relatives I was unstable and refused communication. Marlene gave Linda copies of letters from Mom and the name of the bank where the education account had existed. Linda had kept everything because I was overwhelmed, young, and trying to graduate. Why didn't you tell me? At first, because you were 16 and barely sleeping. Later, because you stopped asking and seemed to be healing. That may have been the wrong decision. What did the letters say? Linda retrieved a locked file box from her car the next morning. She had brought it after Dad arrived, suspecting the past might become relevant. Inside was a letter Mom wrote during her final hospital stay, addressed to me. Hannah, there is an education account with approximately $72,000. Your father is the custodian until you become an adult. This is not payment for losing me. Money cannot do that. It is simply one less fear I can leave you with. Use it for school, housing, training, or the beginning of a life that feels like yours. Beneath the letter were early statements. The account held $71,840 after funeral expenses. Withdrawals began 4 months after Dad married Dana. $12,000 to Maple Lane Property Holdings. $9,400 to Westbrook Preparatory School, where Kelsey enrolled. $25,000 toward the down payment on the dairy farm. Smaller amounts for renovations, property taxes, and a vehicle. By the time I turned 18, the balance was under $2,000. Dad had told me cancer bills consumed it. My dead mother's attempt to protect my future had financed the family that replaced me. I cried with my forehead against the table. Not because the money would have made my early adulthood easy. It would have. But I had survived without it. I cried because Mom had anticipated my fear, planned for it, and trusted Dad to protect the plan. He did not merely abandon me after she died. He redirected her final act of care toward the life he preferred. Luke sat beside me. Greg looked sick. Linda repeated, "I am sorry. You didn't spend it. I should have told you sooner." Maybe. Both truths could exist. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from a small law office in Lansing. The letter claimed Dad had provided support beyond his obligation, that disputed family funds had flowed through my mother's estate, and that he was prepared to pursue reimbursement or equitable recovery in the amount of $68,000. The exact wedding shortage had been transformed into a supposed debt. Luke read it, then said, "We are not handling this alone." We met with an attorney named Camille Ortiz. She reviewed the letter, Mom's account statements, Dad's email giving me 14 days to leave, school records listing the Shaws as emergency contacts, financial aid forms documenting no parental support, and the voicemail Dad left after the birthday. In that message, he said, "You could have solved this privately, but you chose to humiliate me. Do not expect me to protect you from what happens next." Camille listened twice. "This is intimidation wearing a letterhead," she said. "His claim is weak. The education, account records create more risk for him than for you." I did not want a lawsuit or a courtroom. I wanted the threat to stop. Camille sent one response denying every claim, directing all contact through her, and stating that if Dad continued, the education account withdrawals and abandonment records would become part of any formal dispute. His attorney requested time to review. No case was filed. Legally, the threat began disappearing. Emotionally, Dad was just beginning. Dana posted a long message online about parents who sacrificed everything and adult children who returned kindness with cruelty. Kelsey shared it with the caption, "Family should not have to beg family for help, especially during once-in-a-lifetime moments." Dad posted a photograph of Maple Lane Barn decorated with winter lights and wrote, "Everything we built was for our children. Sad that not every child remembers where she came from." I was not tagged, but relatives understood. Messages arrived. Aunt Melissa said I did not have to like Dad to help Kelsey. A cousin suggested giving half the amount to keep peace. Dad's older brother wrote, "Your mother would not want her money causing division." I replied once, "My mother wanted her money used for my education, not the barn or Kelsey's tuition." He did not answer. Other relatives asked questions. Dad's public story depended on nobody knowing the account existed. The first person from his household to contact me privately was Aaron, Kelsey's fiancé. "I was told you promised to invest in Maple Lane, and backed out after an argument," he wrote. "Is that true?" No. I sent no documents, only a factual summary. I had never promised money, had not been invited to the wedding, and Dad had used funds Mom designated for my education years earlier. Aaron replied several hours later, "Kelsey knew you were not invited. She told me you preferred distance. I was never asked. I'm sorry. You didn't create this. I accepted a version that made planning easier." "Honest," Kelsey called that evening, furious. "Why are you involving Aaron? He contacted me. You're trying to ruin my wedding. Your father arrived at my son's birthday, asking me to fund it. He said the barn loan affects the wedding. Then choose a smaller wedding." She began crying. "You already have everything. A husband, a house, a child, a career. I get one wedding." The sentence revealed the family arithmetic. My stable life created evidence I needed less. Her desired event created an emergency. You've received years of things that belong to me. I didn't ask him to throw you out. Did you ask why I disappeared? Mom said you hated us. Did you believe her? You never contacted me. I was 16. Silence. You could have reached out later. So could you. I was a kid too. Yes, then we became adults. You accepted a wedding at a barn funded with my mother's account, and excluded me because my presence might create tension. I didn't know about the account. You knew about the exclusion. It's my wedding, and my money is not your wedding budget. She called me cruel and hung up. A week later, Aunt Marlene invited us to Thanksgiving at her home outside Kalamazoo. She said Dad intended to present a path forward. I declined. Then she added, "He is telling everyone you attacked him at the party, stole family funds, and are using your son as punishment. If you do not come, I will correct what I know. But I cannot speak for you." Luke asked what I wanted. I want to say no once in the room where he expects my silence. We left Miles with Linda and Greg. He did not need to watch adults debate whether his mother had earned the right to protect him. At Marlene's house, 22 relatives filled the dining and living rooms. Dad and Dana arrived early and had arranged seats. Kelsey and Aaron sat near the center. Dad's place was beside Marlene. Dana sat near Kelsey. My place card waited at the far end beside two college-age cousins and the swinging kitchen door. "Why am I here?" I asked. Dana answered, "We needed the engaged couple and immediate family together. I'm Richard's daughter. You've made your position clear. Then why am I being asked for family money?" Luke pulled out the chair beside him and moved my place card. Dad sighed. "Please don't begin with theater." I looked toward him. "You entered my son's birthday, carrying a gift and a demand for $68,000. Conversations stopped. Dad said, "We agreed to discuss that after dinner. You agreed with yourself." Marlene placed a hand on my arm. "Sit where you're comfortable." We ate through strained conversation. Dana asked Kelsey about flowers. Dad discussed weather and vendor costs. Relatives avoided looking at me for too long. Aaron seemed uncomfortable. Luke spoke politely when spoken to, and otherwise remained quiet. He understood this was not a performance requiring a heroic husband. I had a voice. I needed witnesses, not a replacement speaker. After dessert, Dad stood with a printed packet. "I want to address the painful division affecting our family." Dana passed copies around. The cover read, "Cole Family Restoration Agreement." Page 1 described the birthday confrontation as a misunderstanding in which I had become physically and emotionally aggressive after Dad attempted reconciliation. Page 2 stated Dad had supported me for 16 years, continued providing through indirect family resources, and deserved reimbursement from inherited assets I had later received. Page 3 proposed that I contribute $68,000 to Maple Lane Barn as acknowledgement of family sacrifice. In exchange, Dad would withdraw potential claims and add my family to future holiday invitations. Holiday invitations. Access was being offered as a benefit purchase through payment. Page 4 contained an apology I was expected to post publicly. "I regret allowing unresolved teenage pain to cause me to misrepresent my father's intentions. He came to my home seeking family reconciliation, not money, and I reacted unfairly." A signature line waited beneath my name. Dad spoke gently. "This is not about punishment. It is about correcting the story before Kelsey's wedding and allowing everyone to move forward." I looked at him. "Do you believe anything in this packet is true?" "I believe it reflects the full context." "Did you ask me for $68,000? "I asked for a temporary investment." "Was I invited to the wedding?" Kelsey said. "That is separate." "Did you threaten legal action when I refused?" Dad replied, "I said options existed." "Did you tell me I owed you for raising me?" "I reminded you that parents sacrifice." "Did you give me 14 days to leave at 16? Dana sighed. "We are not reopening every teenage conflict." I reached beneath my chair and placed Mom's file box on the table. Dad's face changed before anyone saw the contents. You already reopened it when you based a financial demand on parenting you stopped providing. I passed copies of the email. The date. The words. You have 2 weeks to arrange somewhere else. Your behavior has made it impossible for this household to heal. You are old enough to understand choices have consequences. Aunt Melissa read it twice. Dad said, "That came after months of conflict. I was 16 and my mother had died. You were cruel to Dana and Kelsey." I asked where Mom's money went. Dana crossed her arms. Rebecca's money became marital property. Not the education account. I placed Mom's letter and statements on the table. Marlene began crying before she reached the withdrawals. Dad remained standing. "Those records are incomplete." "Then complete them." The family had expenses. 12,000 to the barn, 9,400 to Kelsey's school, 25,000 to the farm down payment, vehicle expenses, renovations. My account went from $71,840 to under 2,000. Kelsey stared at Dana. "My tuition?" Dana said. "We made decisions for the stability of both girls." "One girl was removed from the house," Luke said quietly. Dana looked at him. "You were not there." Greg's written statement sat inside the box, but I did not need it yet. "The Shaws were there," I said. "They provided housing, food, transportation, health coverage, school support, and a family after Dad canceled my phone and removed me from insurance. He did not contact them. He did not attend graduation. He did not support college. He did not know where I lived until he researched my house before asking for money." Dad looked around the table. "She chose them over us," Marlene said. "Richard, she was 16. She refused every attempt to reconcile." "Name one," I said. I sent cards. Generic cards signed with Dana and Kelsey's names. "You blocked me after you posted Kelsey's graduation while missing mine. You always required perfection." "I required a parent." Silence spread. Dad sat down slowly. Dana remained defensive. "We were trying to save a household. Richard had lost his wife. Kelsey had changed schools. The barn was our chance to rebuild. Using my mother's money. Rebecca was gone." The room changed. Dana heard the sentence too late. Kelsey turned toward her. "Mom." Dana tried to correct herself. "I mean, she could no longer use the money, and Hannah's needs were being met elsewhere." My hands became cold. "You knew I lived with the Shaws. You seemed happy there. So you decided strangers loving me made stealing from me acceptable," Dad said. "Nobody stole." "Then why did you lie about medical bills?" "Because explaining complex finances to an angry teenager would have achieved nothing." "You mean I might have told someone?" He looked away. "Aaron opened the restoration agreement." "You knew all this and still asked her to fund the wedding?" he asked. Dad replied, "The barn debt affects the entire family." "Not Hannah," Aaron said. "You removed her from the family when she was 16. Kelsey's eyes filled. "Are you saying you want to cancel the wedding?" "I'm saying we need to know what we can actually afford." "We already sent invitations." "Then we reduce." She looked toward me. "Are you happy?" "No. You hate me. I don't know you well enough to hate you." The sentence hurt her more than anger would have. "I was 15 too," she whispered. "Yes. I believed what they told me." "Then what did you believe as an adult when you left me off the guest list?" She looked down. "That you would bring conflict. Because my presence might remind people where the barn came from." Dana said. "That is unfair," Aaron replied. "Is it wrong?" Nobody answered. Dad pushed the agreement toward me. "Whatever happened years ago, you are financially secure now. Kelsey did not create the decisions adults made. Neither did I. You can prevent innocent people from losing deposits. By replacing the money you already took from me. This is not the same money. It is the same belief. My needs are flexible. Kelsey's expectations are emergencies." His face hardened. "You have become self-righteous." "I became unavailable for exploitation." "You are punishing everyone." "No. I am refusing to finance the continuation." I slid the unsigned agreement back. There will be no money. There will be no investment. There will be no apology post. Your attorney will receive one final response. After that, every contact becomes documentation. Dad stared. You would take this public? You already did. I was asking family for support. You told family I assaulted you. You blocked my path. I stopped you from walking into my house after being told to leave. You put your hands on me. I stood between you and my child. The bruise lasted a week. The abandonment lasted 15 years. The room became silent. Dad's older brother looked at the account statements. Richard, did Rebecca know? She was dying. That isn't an answer. She trusted me to make decisions. Her letter name's Hannah. Dad looked toward me with anger he could no longer disguise. What do you want? An apology? Money? Public humiliation? I wanted a father at 16. My voice shook for the first time. I wanted you to ask whether I was safe. I wanted you at graduation. I wanted to stop believing Kelsey received my life because she was easier to love. I wanted Mom's final promise to survive her. None of that is available now. He looked away. Then why come here? To stop you from turning my silence into agreement. I stood. From this point forward, you do not contact Luke, Miles, my school, the Shaws, or my friends. You do not repost photographs of my son or call yourself his grandfather publicly. You are not invited to our home. You do not appear at his school, birthdays, sports, or activities. Shared blood does not make my child an opportunity for you to reinvent yourself. Dad whispered, You're keeping my grandson from me over money. You met him once from across a yard because you needed money. I wanted reconciliation. Then why did the request come before the apology? He had no answer. Dana said, One day Miles will ask why he has no grandfather. He has Greg. Greg had never requested the title. He had earned it through ordinary years. Dana's face tightened. That man stole your place in the family. He filled the place Richard abandoned. I turned toward Kelsey. Your wedding is not my responsibility. I will not expose you publicly or contact vendors. Choose the celebration you and Aaron can afford. Whether you continue calling me cruel is your decision. She cried. Were you ever going to come if we invited you? Not after this. Before. I thought about it honestly. Maybe. I spent years wanting one invitation, even after I knew the room would hurt. She covered her face. Aaron placed an arm around her. Dad said, If you leave now, the family will never recover. I looked around the room. A family built on one child disappearing should not recover in its original form. Luke took my coat. Marlene hugged me after asking. Several relatives avoided my eyes. Others whispered apologies too late to feel useful. Dad remained at the table beside the agreement nobody would sign. We left. The legal threat ended the following week. Dad's attorney withdrew after receiving the account records and the birthday voicemail. There was no hearing, no dramatic courtroom, no judge delivering justice. The strongest consequence was simpler. Dad lost control of the story. Aaron insisted on reviewing Maple Lane's finances before moving forward. The barn carried more debt than Kelsey knew. Deposits from future weddings had been used to cover current expenses. The $68,000 would not have solved the business. It would have postponed the collapse long enough for Dad and Dana to keep pretending. Kelsey and Aaron canceled the 3-day Christmas celebration and married in a small ceremony at a lakeside restaurant the following spring. 40 guests. No ice sculptures, horse-drawn entrance, luxury floral ceiling, or weekend cabins. Aaron's parents paid for dinner. Kelsey purchased a simpler dress. Dad described the downsizing as heartbreak caused by an estranged daughter. Aaron corrected him in front of relatives. We downsized because the original wedding depended on money Hannah never promised. That sentence created tension between Aaron and the family, but the marriage survived because he refused to begin it inside a lie. I was not invited to the smaller wedding. By then, that hurt less. Kelsey sent a letter 6 months later. I knew you were excluded from photographs and holidays, but I told myself you preferred distance because that allowed me to enjoy being the only daughter present. I did not know the college money paid my tuition or the barn deposit. When I learned, My first emotion was still anger that you would not save the wedding. I am ashamed of that. I had absorbed the belief that your independence meant your losses were less serious. I am sorry. She did not ask for money or immediate contact. I replied, "Thank you for naming it. I am not ready for a relationship." She answered, "Understood." We have exchanged only a few messages since. She is not responsible for every adult decision made when she was a child. She is responsible for the adult decisions that protected her comfort at my expense. Both truths remain. Dana never apologized. She sent messages through relatives describing herself as a mother who had protected her daughter during a difficult blended family transition. She said I had always resented Kelsey for being loved. I stopped trying to correct her. Some people build identity around innocence so completely that truth feels like annihilation. Distance was safer than waiting for a confession she might never produce. Maple Lane Barn closed 18 months later. Not because I refused the loan. The business had been unstable for years. Dad and Dana sold the property to another event company and moved into a smaller house. Dad posted that they were choosing simplicity after Betrayal revealed who truly valued family. The buyer renovated the barn and removed the wooden sign carrying the Cole name. I felt no victory watching it disappear. The property had been built partly from Mom's money, but reclaiming it physically would not return my adolescence. I allowed the sale to become proof that refusing rescue had not caused the underlying damage. It had merely stopped hiding it. Dad contacted me repeatedly during the first year. Blocked numbers, emails, letters. He alternated between anger, guilt, and false tenderness. "Your mother would be ashamed." Kelsey cried for weeks. "Dana's health has suffered. I hope you understand before it is too late." Miles deserves to know where he came from. Each message treated my boundary as something happening to him rather than something his behavior created. Camille saw one formal notice. The messages stopped for several months, then resumed around Christmas. I changed my number. I told the school office he was not authorized to receive information or approach Miles. Luke and I installed a gate latch. Dad could not open from outside. Those actions initially made me feel dramatic. Then I remembered he had already entered once without permission and attempted to move toward my house after being told no. Safety does not become excessive simply because the person creating danger shares your face. I began therapy again. I had spent years helping children understand abandonment while still carrying my own as evidence I had been difficult to keep. Dad's return reopened that belief. I dreamed I was 16, packing a duffel bag while every room of the house disappeared before I finished. I woke checking whether Luke remained beside me. Some nights I stood outside Miles's bedroom and watched him sleep, overwhelmed by the fact that he never questioned whether morning would contain the same parents as evening. Luke found me once. "You're not 15 anymore," he said. "I know. Do you?" "Not in my body." "What does your body need?" "Time." "Then take it." He did not offer to confront Dad, fix the past, or decide forgiveness. Reliable love often looks like refusing to make another person's pain an opportunity to become heroic. The Shaws remained central. Miles called Linda Grandma Lynn and Greg Grandpa Greg. Dad's reappearance forced me to consider whether those titles belonged to biology. They did not. Greg had driven me to school, waited outside college interviews, helped Luke repair our first apartment, and held Miles while I slept after childbirth. Linda had taught me that asking for food did not make me expensive and that a child could be welcomed without performing gratitude every hour. When Miles asked why Grandpa Greg did not look like me, I said, "Families can grow through promises people keep." He accepted that answer and returned to his dinosaurs. I did not tell him about Richard. Not then. A child does not need every painful truth before the truth becomes relevant to his safety or identity. Dad's public posts eventually changed. He stopped presenting himself as the patient parent and began describing the estrangement as private grief. He shared quotations about parental alienation and children influenced by spouses. Luke laughed once. "Apparently I engineered your feelings beginning when you were 16. I did not laugh. The posts still reached extended family. Some people believed him, others knew enough. I learned that healing did not require unanimous public understanding. The need to control every observer's opinion had controlled my father for most of his life. I would not inherit it. 2 years after the birthday, he sent a different letter. No accusations. No mention of Dana's health, Kelsey's wedding, the barn, or Miles. I told you to leave because Dana said she could not stay if you remained angry and suspicious. I chose the adult relationship that made my new life feel possible over the child, whose grief made me remember the life I had lost. I knew the education account belonged to you in spirit, even if I could access it. I used it because the barn gave me a future I could show people, while supporting you would have required admitting I had failed you. When the barn began collapsing, I came to your house because I still believed you were the child who could be pressured through shame. I used the word family because I wanted the benefits of fatherhood without facing the years I had abandoned the role. I am sorry. I read the letter 3 times. It was the first thing he had written that did not turn his choices into circumstances. He ended with, I am not asking to meet Miles. I am asking whether one day you would be willing to speak with me somewhere public. If the answer is no, I will not contact you again for 1 year. I felt relief, grief, anger, and a dangerous flicker of hope. Specific accountability can reopen a door the injured person had finally stopped guarding. I took the letter to therapy. I showed Luke. I showed Linda and Greg. Nobody told me what to do. After 4 months, I replied, I believe the apology is more honest than anything you have said before. I am not willing to meet. Do not contact us for 1 year. He answered, understood. He kept the boundary. That was new. 1 year later, another letter arrived. It contained no request. I have spent this year attending counseling and working part-time for a building supplier. I no longer tell people you abandoned the family. When asked, I say I removed you from my home at 16 and later returned to ask for money without first apologizing. Some people look at me differently. They should. He wrote that he had returned several of Mom's belongings found during the move, her ceramic button jars, 2 sketchbooks, a scarf, and the brass key from her old art cabinet. A box arrived separately through Camille's office. No sentimental ambush. No photograph of himself. I opened the sketchbooks at our dining table. Mom had drawn my face dozens of times. Sleeping in a car seat. Reading on the porch. Frowning over homework. In one margin she had written, Hannah always looks serious when she is building something. I cried until Luke took Miles to the park so I could be alone. Dad's honesty did not erase what he had done. It allowed me to stop wondering whether I had imagined it. That mattered. I sent a brief message. I received Mom's belongings. Thank you. He replied, You're welcome. Nothing else. We have not met. 5 years have passed since the birthday party. Miles is 11. He knows I had a father who failed to care for me and is not part of our family. I told him after he saw Dad's name on an old photograph. Did he die? Miles asked. No. Then why doesn't he visit? Because sharing blood does not automatically make someone safe. Did he hurt you? Yes. Would he hurt me? I won't let him. Miles thought about that. Is Grandpa Greg your real dad? I said. He is the man who did the work of being one. Miles nodded. Then yes, children often understand distinctions adults spend years resisting. I remain a school counselor. After Maple Lane closed, I used part of my grandmother's inheritance, the money Dad had not reached, because it came years later to create a small emergency fund through our district for students facing sudden housing loss. The fund pays for motel nights, transportation, clothing, school supplies, and background costs that make a teenager feel like a burden while adults are still deciding what to do. We named it the Open Door Fund, not after me, Mom, or the Shaws. Linda cried when she heard the name. Greg pretended dust had entered his eye. I do not tell students my entire story. I tell them the sentence Linda gave me beside the car when I was 16. Stop negotiating your right to be safe. Some understand immediately. Others remember years later. Kelsey and I met once, at Aunt Marlene's funeral. Dana did not attend because she said being near me would be emotionally unsafe. Dad sat in the back and did not approach. Kelsey found me near the parking lot. "He's changed," she said. "Maybe. He talks about you differently." "Good. Would you ever see him?" "I don't know. He doesn't ask me to pressure you anymore." "That is also good." She looked toward Luke and Miles. "I'm sorry I said you had everything. I do have a lot. That wasn't the point." "No. I had parents, a home, tuition, the barn, the wedding. You had stability because you built it after losing those things. I used the result to pretend the loss did not matter." "Thank you. Could we ever be sisters?" Honest question. Not in the way people expect from the word. Something smaller? Maybe. We exchange birthday messages now. She does not enter my home, contact Miles directly, or ask for access through guilt. The relationship is narrow because trust is narrow. That is not punishment, it is the size supported by reality. Dad continues sending one letter each year through Camille. Some contain updates. Some contain memories of Mom he should have shared long ago. He has never again threatened court, asked for money, reposted Miles's photographs, or appeared without permission. He eventually divorced Dana. I do not know whether their marriage ended because the barn disappeared, accountability changed him, or their relationship had always depended on a shared story that no longer worked. I did not investigate. His growth belongs to him. My decision about access belongs to me. People sometimes ask whether I have forgiven him. I have stopped organizing my life around hatred. I can remember the birthday without shaking. I can read Mom's letters without seeing the money first. I can acknowledge that Dad may now understand what he did. If forgiveness means I no longer need his suffering to prove mine mattered, then yes. If forgiveness means restoring him as my father, inviting him into my house, or allowing him to build a relationship with Miles, then no. Those are different decisions. Remorse can change a person without returning him to the place he destroyed. Last June, we celebrated Miles's 11th birthday in the same backyard. No inflatable slide this time. He wanted a soccer game, tacos, and an outdoor movie after dark. The maple tree had grown enough to shade most of the patio. Greg grilled. Linda argued with Luke about whether children needed 3 kinds of dessert. Olivia arrived late with folding chairs, continuing Greg's universal assignment. Before guests came, I checked the gate once, then again. Luke noticed, but said nothing. At sunset, Miles asked whether we could take a family photograph. I reached for the phone automatically. Olivia took it from me. "You're in this one." We crowded beneath the maple tree. Luke beside me, Miles in front, Linda and Greg on either side, Olivia and her family squeezing behind us. None of us matched. Nobody had rehearsed. In the best photograph, Miles was laughing at something Greg said, and I was looking toward him instead of the camera. We printed it for the hallway. Beneath the frame, Miles wrote, "Family is who comes because they love you, not because they need something." He had heard me say a simpler version once. He improved it. I did not post the photograph publicly. Some joy deserves to exist without becoming evidence. The strongest thing I did at 31 was not threatening my father with records, rejecting his lawyer's letter, correcting relatives, or exposing where Mom's money went. The strongest thing happened during the first seconds after he entered the gate. I looked at my son and understood I no longer had to become the frightened daughter to survive my father's presence. I was the adult responsible for the safety of that yard. I did not owe politeness to someone using a child's birthday as leverage. I did not owe privacy to a man who had already distributed a false version publicly. I did not owe money because he had performed the minimum legal responsibilities of parenthood for part of my childhood. I did not owe access because time had passed. Boundaries are often described as walls built from anger. Mine became a gate with a lock I controlled. Some people were welcomed through because they had shown care, consistency, and respect. Others remained outside because they believed blood was a permanent key. Dad taught me that a parent could abandon a child quietly. Linda and Greg taught me that family could choose a child deliberately. Luke taught me that love did not require constant fear of withdrawal. Miles taught me that protecting the next generation sometimes means accepting that the previous one will call you cruel. My mother taught me through one surviving letter that preparing a child for freedom is an act of love. Dad spent her money, but he could not erase the intention. I built the life anyway. That became the final answer to every accusation that I was ungrateful. I was grateful to the people who stayed, to the people who asked whether I was safe, to the people who never calculated what feeding a child entitled them to collect later. I simply stopped giving gratitude to the wrong person. So here's the question I would ask anyone listening. Because people remain divided when they learn, my father eventually gave a full apology and respected my boundaries for years, but I still have not allowed him to meet my son. If a father threw you out at 16 after using the education fund your dying mother left for you to build a new life for his wife and her daughter, ignored every milestone, returned only to demand $68,000 for the wedding you were excluded from, and threatened your family when you refused, but later admitted everything and genuinely changed, would you allow him one carefully controlled chance to become a grandfather, or would the gate remain closed forever?